I hope there's enough seats. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Real briefly, my name is Gary Phillips. I'm a board member here of the Southern California Library for Social Studies and Research, and part of our mission is to catalog the movements and events that have the progressive movement in this country, particularly in this city, have participated in over the years. And of course, there's no more fitting living tribute to that than our honoree today, Chuck Mosley. I want to thank everybody for coming out today, and it's a hot day today. So before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to remind our speakers we would like to keep to our timetable and make it relatively short and sweet, and hopefully there'll be enough time afterwards for visiting and for people to talk and reminisce and what have you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my first speaker, Brother Wazir Muhammad. Brother Wazir.
For the benefit of everybody who may not know the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum, it simply means peace be unto you. And we're taught, as Muslims, to begin every important event in the name of Allah or in the name of God. And I think you know that any tribute to my brother is an important event. So we want to start that in the name of God. And I want to thank everybody who's here for caring enough for my brother to come and pay tribute to his life. And I was taught in public speaking to try to always speak on a subject that you've earned the right to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So there are two kinds of speakers: those who have something to say and those who have to say something. And I'm not in a position that I have to do this, but I'm very, very glad to have the opportunity to say anything in behalf of my brother. I started off by telling you that he's been my brother for a very long time. I'm 60, will be 61 this month, and every one of those 61 years he's been a companion to myself. I'd like to let you know that he's a person that is loving and worthy of love, and we'll start it by saying that I do love my brother. He's a man that is very courageous. As a matter of fact, the tone that is set in my mind to make me feel that there's no way that I can exist on this planet with oppression against my people and me not do anything about it came as a result of this man's activity before me. You know, you always watch your big brother. You try to pattern yourself after your big brother. If your father's not there, and you don't have a father figure, and your big brother becomes the father figure. And Charles, or Chuck as you call him, was always somebody that was looking for new, innovative ways to equip himself for the struggle that he felt and knew for a fact there was a necessity to wage. Listen to what I'm saying. We were born in Texas in the 30s. Need I say more? My brother has never felt inferior to anybody, but nevertheless we were cast in a position where inferiority was the order of the day. If you were black, that was your position. Even from growing up, he never accepted that, and because he didn't accept it, I never accepted it. When it got to the point that there was a fight to be waged, he was always there to fight regardless to the circumstances. I can remember when I had problems with some of the neighborhood kids. And it was not just the kind of neighborhood kids that you have struggle one against the other, but it was a situation where racism, or white against black, was so deep in the minds of the people that it was down to the young children. And since our neighborhood bordered on the white community, every time that we would set foot in the white community, we would get jumped on. And I remember an incident where I learned a lesson of my life, because I strayed across the boundaries and got into a fight with one and ended up with about 4 people on my back. And I'm looking for help, and always when I look for help, my brother Charles was on the scene. He showed up, and he went right away to alleviate the circumstances. In other words, he started putting his foot in every butt that he could see. And as soon as he got the pressure up off of me, then what I did, because I had so much pressure before he got there, I turned tail and broke to the house and left him with all the problems. When he did get himself free, he came back and told my grandmother what happened. And that's the last time that I have ever run and left any brother in a fight. That's a lesson that must be learned, because he's a brother that never turns tail. Most of the people here that have known him know that he chose, as a method of waging a struggle for the freedom of our people, to be involved in what at one time was American Young Democrats, but they were all, how you say, communist-fronted organizations that had the idea that to use the minorities to struggle against the system that we're part of. He chose to come in because they came into our neighborhood. They came into our neighborhood, and they were the only people in the neighborhood that were coming with a sense of equality in the relationship. They came mostly on a social basis. They had it so that black and white were sitting together and being together and partying together as young people do, in a manner that it allowed them to be able to get the philosophy that they had in mind across to the people. Now, this was an avenue of struggle that was available. That's all that was there. There was even no thought of struggle. We just knew that we were in a position, and all we had to do was fight as gangs, but there was no way to change the reality of our life. So when this was brought, and my brother grabbed hold to it, and he grew from being an American Young Democrat, which is a communist behind the door, to be a full-fledged communist out in front of the door. But regardless of how it happened, he stood up in a way, or using the vehicle that was there for him. Now, as I grew, I came behind him. There's a lot of things that he was doing that was not my choice of the way to do it. But the need for struggle was still there. And he always tried to bring something, like I say, in the way of fighting with. He was the first somebody to ever introduce martial arts into Aliso village in our community. We didn't know what karate was. We never heard anything like that. But he went and found a man by the name of Arvin Goslow, and he followed this man around until he learned some of the principles of martial arts. Judo, karate, what have you. And so now when you see me, I make sure that there's somebody around me that knows something about judo or karate. You understand what I'm saying? Bottom line, because sometimes you don't wage struggle with weapons. Sometimes you have to wage struggle with whatever you have. So I have to feel confident that wherever I go, that we're capable of dealing with whatever situation comes up. These are things that I learned from my brother. He has never been a person that has been aggressive in his behavior toward anybody. He's a gentle giant if you've ever met one. If you know him, you know that's a fact. That the man is a man that you don't feel any harm coming from his mouth or from his hand. He's a brother in the greatest sense of the word. So if there's somebody that I know that has a right for somebody to pay tribute to him, then I would say that Charles, slave named Mosley, the mother of probably the greatest mother that was ever on the planet. Mother, would you stand up, please? The brother has never stopped. Now, there's a feeling in my family. When I say my family, I'm talking about all of the men and the women that came from her womb. There's a brotherhood that is there, that we will live for one another, do whatever is necessary to help one another, and we will die for one another. Now, there's an immense, great love in my family. And the reason for it is because the mother that produced us, or the womb that produced us, is a woman that is consumed with love, not just for herself and her family, but for humanity itself. She has a Christian attitude and a Christian concept in her mind that believes in forgiveness. She believes in the brotherhood of man. I mean, she has a spirit that is not quite in me. But it was in me up until the time that I found that it would not work with the people that were in front of myself. Now, my hope, my prayer, my aspirations, and my drive are just like the hopes, prayers, aspiration, and drive of Chuck Mosley. And that is that as long as there's oppression in the land, that we have a right as men and as women to fight the oppressor until that oppression ceases. Now, if it's not in the heart of the one with the foot on the neck to take the foot off the neck, then if Allah bless us, we'll cut his foot off, cut his leg off, cut his head off, and end his life. If Allah bless us to do that. But now, if mankind ever comes to the point that the kind of brotherhood that we find in my family is evident and we can have a brotherhood of man, I'm all for that too. I want to thank you again for coming out, giving honor to my brother, and I give honor to him, and I thank God for his presence, and I pray God that he's with us a long time in the future. I thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. All right, coming up now is himself, a person who has been around in the struggle for a long time, a person who, as well as with Chuck, who I heard about way back when, since I was coming up, and since I've been around, and who is now, I believe, currently one of the Pasadena City Commissioners, which is their city council. I'd like to introduce Mr. Don Wielden. Don?
Also going to be very mindful that you're the timekeeper. Let me say at the outset, it takes an awful lot, to get me to leave Pasadena to come to Los Angeles. So when I heard that this was going to be for Chuck Mosley, I figured I had to make the extra effort because it was an extra special event around an extra special human being. Coming in tonight, I had some interesting feelings about it. I felt almost as though I had gone into a store to buy a lottery ticket. And I not only bought a lottery ticket, but I bought the winning lottery ticket. And that's what made me feel good about being here with Chuck Mosley tonight. I'm mindful of the time constraints, and I'm only want to talk about some things which I feel some of you may recall, some things which if you can't or don't recall them, you at least ought to have some understanding and knowledge of them. Chuck and I have held endless telephone conversations about endless things that we've been involved in since he was one of Charlotte Bass's boys around the California, the Eagle. We, as you know, had a lot to talk about. One of the things, though, that I think ought to be known, because I'm not sure you're going to get it anyplace else, and that is when Compton was exclusively a white community and the problems arose as to how to integrate or insinuate blacks into that community. I'm going to cite one example. There could be endless examples cited, but this one may help to bring to mind. A number of us, John Lee, some of you may remember, who used to be an editor for Charlotte Bass, myself, had been called upon to bring a measure of greeting to a black lady who came from the Midwest to take up residence in Compton. She had 3 small children, the oldest of which was probably 4 or 5. There was no man on the scene, so we went out of a early Sunday day to talk with her, and she said that the thing that disturbed her mostly is she didn't know anybody out here. So I decided to leave my card. I had a card then, Don Wielden, reporter, daily peoples were. And I said, well, look, we don't expect that you'll have any problems, but if you do, let us know. So I left the card, and as things happened, I got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning. That was Sunday evening, around 1 o'clock into Monday. A picket line had been set out in front of her house. Her telephone wires had been cut. And here she was with these children, little children, without knowing a soul any place in this area. What she had to do was to leave those children in the house, make a departure from the back of the house across an open area where she could get to a telephone, and the only telephone number she had was mine, and she called me in Pasadena, and she was hysterical because she was frightened for her children. So I told her I would be out there as soon as I could get there from Pasadena. So I immediately got in the car and came over, and I went by, some of you may remember the name of Otto and Eleanor Brody. They were having a party that night. And I decided to go by there to recruit some people so that we could go out to this woman's house, at least with some strength, to sort of help wherever we could. Well, by the time we got to the lady's house, the picketing had ceased. There was nobody in the area, but the woman, of course, couldn't use her telephone. And she, of course, was in a state of almost semi-shock there with the children. So what we did was, of course, go to the chief of police, the office of the chief of police. Of course, at that time of night, he wasn't there, and left word that we were coming back the next day, and we did. And it was interesting because at that time, this chief of police had just come to Compton. He hadn't been there 3 weeks. And he turned out to be a very decent guy. He said he wasn't going to stand for that kind of activity in his community. And as a consequence, we, of course, were able to go to the church groups, go to the trade union people, and to set up a system of support for her. And after a while, things tended to calm down. The reason I cite this is I am citing to symbolize the kind of work that Chuck Mosley has been doing for the past 25, 30, 35 years in this community. I'm saying this because when one speaks or thinks in terms of who was the person or the groups that helped to integrate Compton, it was people like Chuck Mosley and others who helped to actually do these things. Secondly, I wanted to point out that most people know Chuck for his security work on behalf of Paul Robeson. And it was true that Paul Robeson used to ask for him every time he'd come to town, "Where's Chuck Mosley?" But not only Paul Robeson, there was Richard Hatcher, mayor of Gary, John Conyers, and many other prominent visitors who came to this community. Thank you very much. Came to this community, had their safety and their security taken care of by Chuck Mosley, and for whom they, of course, became very grateful. But not only here, we know the work that Chuck has done at the Unitarian Church. And it's interesting to me, you know, the reason I'm saying these things, I have a sense of personal pride. Chuck is my former student, you see, and he learned his lessons well, I might add. In Pasadena, there's a lady, some of you may know her name, Ann Byler, who was part of the massive 20,000 member group to protest LBJ's coming here on behalf of the Vietnam War. I don't know how many of you recall that, but I noticed there's a Rap Brown poster up there. Well, Rap Brown was there. I happen to know that because I handled his press conference there that day. Muhammad Ali was there. All of the peace forces, not only in this community, but generally, came there to express to the President of the United States their opposition to Vietnam. And this was the time when Gates let go with his forces on this crowd in such a way that they were hemmed in and couldn't get out. And one of these people, Ann Byler, was hurled to the ground, and people were about to stumble over her, and she's a very short person, if you will recall, those of you who knew her. And the thing that saved her, and she never ceased talking about it, was that Chuck Mosley made his way to the area where she had fallen, picked her up, and personally guaranteed that she was able to get out of there. And she never ceased talking about it for years afterwards. She would always talk about Chuck Mosley and how he had helped to save her. I could, of course, speak further on the work that Chuck did with me down in Riverside when we had the Bucky Walker case, where the frame-up of this young black airman took place. And we not only had the responsibility of seeking to press forward with the best possible defense for him, but we had the problems of seeking to get some kind of public understanding or some kind of public information available in which people were able to see what was really taking place in relation to Walker. We had to set up mass meetings. We had to meet with people, talk with them, because it came at a very difficult time. It came at the time of the Smith Act charges against leaders of the Communist Party here on the West Coast and throughout the country. And it meant, since I was working on the People's World, my editor, Slim Connolly, was one of those picked up, and they all were carted off to jail. So what they did was they linked our support for Walker in such a way as to make it appear that that was part of the conspiracy with which to overthrow the government of the United States. So you can see the nature of the problem we had to deal with. And I think it was in such a situation that Chuck began to see how complex and how difficult it was to try to get some of these things done. I have merely cited some of the instances because I know the constraints we have on time. I want to say not only to Chuck, but to Mimi and to his family. They have been a symbol for all of us in terms of consistency and devotion to the causes of justice and to the causes for which we all fight. And so I say, although, again, I am only doing this because it is Chuck. Chuck, I salute you.
Now I believe we're going to have a slight musical interlude with one of the with Chuck Jr., one of the myriad Mosleys we have here today. So wherever the heck he is, where did he disappear to? He can come on up.
I've already thrown the guitar out of tune, and I won't be very long. Okay. Quick, pack your bags and head for the hills, she said. You're not the only one accused of having fun. 51 in the sun. And don't forget your toothpaste and your wheels, she said. You're not the only one accused of having fun. 91 in the sun. And hurry up, we ain't got much time, she said. Slow down, you you ain't the only boy with a built-in toy. Ship ahoy, ship ahoy. So get to walking. So I walked up on the mountainside to see what I could see, and to feel the rain splash down upon my face. But when I got up on the top, you know all that I saw was a brick, a fence, and a piece of string. But what I don't understand is what that has to do with being a man. You just don't turn my head and look into the sun, the most beautifulest one. So just take your time, 'cause there ain't no rush no more. The night's coming on, and it's a long way home. I said it's a long, long way home, and I don't know if I'll make back by morning time. Said I may never make it back. No, I may never, never, never. Thank you. And thank you, Dad and Mother and everybody here.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to come up and say a few words before you start your? Okay. Okay. We're going to kill the lights for a few minutes, and Steve Orell, who's one of the organizers of this event, is going to present a slideshow. But Steve, I think you want to say something about it, though.
I just wanted to say that I'm extremely proud and honored to participate in this tribute to Chuck, because so often we're accustomed, to looking only at the people who are under the lights on the stage. And Chuck Mosley is the man that protected the stage. And if it wasn't for Chuck and the security work that he has done, people who sang songs of freedom and had visions of equality and liberty and spoke the truth would never have been able to get their messages across. Because we know in other cities, like Peekskill, New York, where the Nazis and reactionaries attacked Paul Robeson at his concert there. But in Los Angeles, Chuck and the people he worked with were able to ensure that the message of freedom and equality got across. So for that, I salute you, Chuck. And I just wanted to say that the slides that we're about to see is just like a drop in the bucket of the activities that Chuck and his co-workers and associates participated in. But we're presenting it just to give a little bit of flavor to the period of time we're talking about. And in here you may see yourselves or your friends, and this isn't a formal presentation. Please speak up. And in fact, I'm going to put a couple of people on the spot to explain a few of these slides. So with that, we're ready. Do any of you recognize yourselves?
now I'd like to introduce another one of the family, Lorraine. Where is it, Maureen?
I'm having a very hard time remaining dry-eyed. This is a beautiful tribute to my father. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Before I begin, first of all, I'd like to ask my youngest daughter, who's going to be reading a poem, to come up over here so she can start reading immediately after I finish. I would like to quickly introduce our family. This is one of my grandchildren, Zainab. There is my sister, Shirley. There is my grandmother, who represents 5 generations, and I'm introducing 5 generations. This is the 5th. There is my brother Chucky, who you saw perform, and his wife and their daughter. I believe their daughter's here. There's also my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law standing in the back with my other grandchildren. I have my 2 daughters here. Could you just wave at least? That's one, and you'll be meeting the younger one in a minute. She has composed a poem. And there are my 3 sons. Does that sound familiar? In the back, raising their hands. We are 5 generations of a family that have grown up loving each other. This is in spite of the familiar refrain, "What about the children?" And every time I hear that, I look at myself and I respond, this is about the children. When my parents were married, there were not interracial marriages in Los Angeles. Thank God they married. I'm so glad my mother had the great sense to marry him, because the children have come out each different, each active, each responsible, and each full of love. And although we are not the same within the family, as you see, I wear a scarf. I'm a Muslim. I'm a journalist. I work at KPFK Radio right now. And we have all gone different ways. But when we come together, the love is there. And we're the most argumentative, loving family you will ever meet. And we are not alike. Let me just say something. I'm feeling a lot of pain today, as well as a lot of happiness, because I'm watching our community that I have grown up and taught to love turning hateful. And I'm talking about us, and in this room, this represents kind of a strange thing, something that's not happening out there. And that's, we've got a room full of so much diversity. You name it, that person is here. But this is not happening out in our community now, in spite of the fact that my father spent his entire life, and by the way, it's not 20, 30 years. I am 48 years old, and he was fighting 20, 30 years before me. So please, his whole lifetime has been devoted to that. And he taught me to be a fighter. And I have spent the same thing, only because of him. I believe when we answer, what about the children? I believe that's the result of that marriage. That marriage was the best thing that ever happened to me and to our children and to our family. And those follow. In fact, one of the organizers, and I'd like to pay tribute to her, who is doing something very beautiful, and that is Karen Bass, to try to eliminate the liquor stores from our community that have destroyed this community. I think that these people, and my parents, I remember in West Adams going through that same fight. And all of a sudden, that fight has to be fought again. But this time it looks like we might have a better chance to succeed. I hope everybody in this room is going to get behind that move and get rid of the greatest evil that has hurt our community. And I would like to leave you with one more thought. When I think of the African American community, I think in a totally different way. Even my own children who have grown up in it, but have grown up in a little more prosperous enclave. I think of my neighbors. I think of the friendliness. I think of knowing Mrs. Jones across the street, Mrs. Smith across the way, knowing my postman. This is my gut reaction when the uprising started. And I started to go out. And I had just gotten back a short time before that from Iraq. Prior to that, I'd been to Bangladesh and every war place you can see all around the world. Even my own family was very concerned. Mom, why are you going out there? I said, this is my community. You mean I'm afraid of my own community? This is the community I love. Because I know within this community, the majority of people are wonderful people who say hello to their neighbors, who you walk out in the street and you wave at. You will find that in no other community in this country. That kind of love that people have for each other. So that's what I want to leave you with, is what I was raised feeling, and I want to see that continue. And I see another generation in people like Karen Bass and those who are working for this. So I see we have raised another generation. When my parents go, when I go, I can see it's still going to continue. Now I would like to introduce my youngest daughter, who was born rather late in life, and that is Sayyida Mirza. She had composed a poem just after the uprising, and so I would like her to recite it, and I think it would be a fitting tribute to her grandfather.
It's all right to be different, no matter who you are. Some people wear scarves, some wear crosses or stars. It's all right to be different, whether you're deaf, dumb, or blind. We are all human beings, so we should try to be kind. It's all right to be different. We have many nations, so that we may know one another as a friend, a sister, or even a brother.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you both. All right, we're going to have two more speakers, and then we're going to get to the main man himself. Right now, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine. She and I know each other a long time, which reminds me how old I'm getting. But anyway, and Lorraine just mentioned her name, and Karen is the executive director of the Substance Abuse Prevention. Wait a minute, no. Yeah, something like that. It's a long name, but anyway, here she is, Karen Bass.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciated your comments, Lorraine. When Lorraine mentioned the fact that the organization that I work with the very long, awkward name, the Community Coalition for Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment, is in the middle of a campaign that's calling for South Central to be rebuilt without liquor stores, when she mentioned that, and she mentioned the fact when she mentioned that she thought that we might be successful this time, I think to the degree that we're successful is really due to people that have helped guide us along the way, such as Chuck Mosley, and also a number of other people too, and one of whom is in the room with us today that I've worked with a number of years in addition to Chuck, is Charlie Dubois. And I know that in talking to Chuck before this event, when we were planning it, you know, he mentioned the fact that Homer is not with us, and Homer was certainly one of those individuals that made such a significant contribution to my life. And I'm really glad that we're here today, and I feel real good about the turnout and the crowd that is here and the number of people in this room that I've seen over the last 20 years. And what I feel real good about is that we did it right this time, you know? I mean, we didn't wait. We always wait, and then we feel regretful that we don't pay tribute to somebody, and then we sit around and we're depressed and feeling guilty that the person is no longer with us, and we wished we would have said all those things, you know. But we did it right this time, and we didn't wait, and we're paying tribute to somebody that has made just an incredible impact in my life, and I would like to share a couple of stories with you in terms of why I feel he's made such an impact. There was one of the slides that was shown a little while ago about an event that took place at First Unitarian Church with the Vince Ramos Brigade put on. When I was 19, I went to Cuba with the Vince Ramos Brigade for the first time, and something that I guess I've managed to do continually throughout my life is get in way above my head. And after I came back from Cuba, I certainly did that. And I was put in charge of the Vince Ramos Brigade for Southern California and given the responsibility to recruit and organize delegations to go to Cuba. And we put on an event, and we decided that we would put on this very large event at the First Unitarian Church, and we would innocently show a movie called Lucia. And I know I talked to my own father, and he warned me that we were messing in territory that we really weren't prepared to deal with, which is the anti-Castro Cubans, or gusanos, or worms, as we called them. And I said, "Oh, Dad, I don't know what you're getting so upset about." Well, lo and behold, the night before the event took place, the church was bombed. There was a pipe bomb that was put at the doorway of the church. And before we put the event on, a number of people kind of gathered around and introduced themselves to me, and really just kind of, I found them moving around and coming to our meetings, and I really didn't know who Chuck Mosley was. I didn't know who Charlie Du Bois was, or our Homer. I didn't know these individuals, but I found that they were there looking out for us, even when, number one, we didn't know we were in above our heads, and number two, we sure didn't have a clue what to do about it. And then number three, we found out years later some of the people we trusted, in fact, turned out to be LAPD undercover officers. And at the time, I know when we were planning the event, the security for the event, a number of us, given that we were all, you know, in our early 20s and all, were off on the deep end and thinking we were going to be armed and we were going to go, you know, defend this and defend that. Didn't know what to do with the weapons we had, but anyway, a number of individuals like Chuck told us there's a lot of ways you can defend events, you can do security without putting yourself in danger. And for many years after that, every time we put on an event in relation to Cuba, Chuck was always there. The Sparrows were there. They always protected us. Even when we didn't have events, Chuck would call, Chuck would come over, and I always knew that when I was in over my head and had planned an event that got way out of hand and much too big and then didn't know what to do with it, that I could always go to Chuck, I could go to the Sparrows, I could go to a number of the people that are in this room today, and that they would be there for us, and they would be there to guide us. And one thing that I will make a commitment to do in honor of Chuck, in honor of Homer, in honor of Don, in honor of many of the people around here is my life will be dedicated to social justice. My life will be dedicated in honor of them, and also with their guidance and the lessons that I've learned. Sometimes you think we don't pay attention when you're telling the stories, but we understand that's education, that's graduate school. We're paying close attention. We intend to follow in your footsteps. We intend to carry on. We salute you, and we love you, Chuck.
It's a pleasure to bring up now a person who you, I guess, have all seen over the period of time on the stage, screen, and movies and all that jive, and somebody who's been a friend of the library here for a number of years as well, Mr. William Marshall.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long afternoon, but well worth it, without question. Ms. Bass, I just wanted to comment on the fact that people who are, how did you characterize yourself? You said you were a little, you didn't say timorous. No, not at least, but I was just going to say they're some of the most worthwhile beings on the entire earth, the people that you were talking about that you were characterized with. I've forgotten the precise phrase. I don't know whether any of you know the birth date or the time that our friend whom we're here to say hello to and honor this evening was born. But I have the feeling it was probably in the early 30s maybe, and I'm trying to link him with a piece that was written at about that time, and a song associated with called The Purest Kind of a Guy. The piece was written by Mark Blitzstein. It's in New York, and I think it opened at about the time we could call the opening, or the door that finally opened to help Chuck Mosley enter into this life. And I'd just like to share a little bit of that with him. I'm sure he'll remember it. I ain't a reading man, I ain't a thinking man, an eating, drinking man when I can get it to eat and drink. I ain't the suffer kind, I ain't the rougher kind, I ain't the buffer kind, I'm just a happy-go-lucky gink. But one thing I got an extra sense. I know what guys is like, I know what makes them click, I know what makes them tick. And when a man's okay, I can tell him a mile away. There's a kind of man when he winks his eye. I can tell that man's the purest kind of a guy. Black or white or tan ain't the reason why. I will know that man's the purest kind of a guy. Go on and ask me how I can be certain, how I can pick him out like a shot, and he will never upset my plot by acting dirty and sly like a usual guy on the spot. Well, I don't know how I know that I know, but I know he will not. How he says hello, how he says goodbye, how he winks his eye will show the purest kind of a guy. Though he's easy-going, you will find that he knows his mind. That's the purest kind of a guy. Take it from one who knows, and don't make no mistake. Wherever there are Joes, the world is on the make. And so tonight is why we give a hail and a hello to the purest kind of a guy. Well, Chuck, that's for you. Chuck, if I hadn't been trying to sing that to you, I don't know what would have happened. Something even worse would have come out. But we found the pitch from time to time, so that's a big help. I think everyone here knows something about Chuck's birth and things he's done since then. I just remember briefly a story he told me when we met, just moments ago it seems, back in 1953. And he had a little bit of an interesting twang, an accent of a sort in his speech. And I said, Chuck, where are you from? And he bit his lip and he said, Texas. So I didn't want to hear the rest of that. I knew where he was going with it. And one altercation there with some tough Texans made it very apparent to our friend there that Texas was not where he was going to stay. He loved a lot of people there because there's a big family of Mosleys there, and he's seen them a lot since, but I don't think he went there to see them. Am I right? I'm wrong. Anyway, Chuck left Texas early on, and I think that was because he had in his mind that there were going to be no more auction blocks for me. No more, no more, No more auction block for me, many thousands gone. No more driver's lash for me, no more, no more, no more driver's lash for me, many thousands gone. That's the way it was. A few days ago, I called a mutual friend of Chuck's and mine in San Francisco, and I knew he just recently had a very horrible experience. He almost lost his eye in an accident, and I knew certainly that he wasn't going to be able to meet the engagement or make the engagement that we were all looking forward to see him at, this very one. And so I said, I'm sorry that you and your dear wife Loretta can't make it, and I know that Chuck and Mimi are going to be very sad about that too. But I know you've been thinking about Chuck a lot lately, and I'd like to share just a tiny thought of yours relative to the man Chuck. And hardly without taking a breath, our friend Joe Johnson of the Marine Cooks and Stewards there in San Francisco said on a phone that didn't have the best connections, here's a man, rugged yet refined, courageous, fearless, fierce yet gentle, strong but never flamboyant. He's always there, like the foundation of a structure. You never see the foundation, but without the foundation, you don't have much of a building. In fact, no building at all. That's from Joe Johnson. Good. I hope some of you might know of that gentleman, our dear friend. In conclusion, a work by, I think, our foremost folklorist, Sterling Brown. He might not have known Chuck, but he certainly knew of the materials that Chuck was made with. And this is a work, one of his earliest works, that kind of bespeak how he felt about such men. It's called, incidentally, Strong Men. They dragged you from homeland. They chained you in coffles. They huddled you spoon fashion in filthy hatches. They sold you to give a few gentlemen ease. They broke you in like oxen. They scourged you. They branded you. They made your women breeders. They swelled your numbers with bastards. They taught you the religion they disgraced. You sang, keep a inching along like a poor inchworm. You sang, by and by, I'm gonna lay down this heavy load. You sang, walk together, children, don't you get weary. The strong men keep it coming on. The strong men get stronger. They point with pride to the roads you built for them. They ride in comfort over the rails you laid for them. They put hammers in your hands and they said, drive so much before sundown. You sang, ain't no hammer in this land strikes like mine, baby, strikes like mine. They cooped you in their kitchens. They penned you in their factories. They gave you the jobs that they were too good for. They tried to guarantee happiness to themselves by shunting dirt and misery to you. You sang, me and my baby gonna shine, shine. Me and my baby gonna shine. The strong men keep it coming on. The strong men get stronger. They bought off some of your leaders. You stumbled as blind men will. They coaxed you unwantedly soft-voiced. You followed away, then laughed as usual. They heard the laugh and wondered, uncomfortable, and admitting a deeper terror. The strong men keep a coming on, getting stronger. What from the slums where they have hymned you? What from the tiny huts they could not keep from you? What reaches them, making them ill at ease, fearful? Today they shout prohibition at you. Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. Reserved for whites only. You laugh. One thing they cannot prohibit, the strong men coming on, strong men getting stronger, strong men stronger. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Brother Chuck Mosley.
You know, you'll have to excuse me, because it's a moving thing to see so many people doing things of such. I'm moved by all the things that are happening. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not talking loud enough. Just give me a moment to compose myself, because I see so many people around me who've kind of been responsible for life, for the direction by which I've took in life. I see so many people from which I learned. I see so many people around me. It's hard to say. You know, I'm sorry, Frank. Am I talking loud enough for you to hear? Yeah. First, before I get started with anything, I want to introduce my family. I want to introduce them. I mean, my mother, who is 91 years young, sitting right over here, she's the one responsible for me coming into this world. And you know something? I feel I'm very fortunate today to have my mother with me. Because sometimes these things don't happen. Your mother's very important to you. And when you can have them with you so long, that thing out of the way. You know, when you can have them with you so long, then that's a wonderful thing. Again, I want to say, I'm going to introduce my wife to you. Here's my wife, Marion, over here. She is one of the people that's also responsible for me being able to do many things, to being able to now I want to introduce some of my children. Some of them are here. Lorraine. My son Chucky, where is he?
Where are you,
Chuck?
Chuck? He's with the baby.
Yeah, well, you can bring the baby. Then I want to
There he
introduce
is. There he is.
Chuck. Come on up. Bring the baby with you.
Got somebody else.
He's got my great granddaughter with him.
We have too many children.
Here's my wife here. Now, here's my grandson, John. John.
And our new daughter.
And our new daughter, Andrea. There's my grandson, Wadjet, right over there.
Where is he?
There's my grandson, Asif and Yusuf, over on that side. And my granddaughter, great-granddaughter, come on over. Pip. Pip. Come on, bring the baby over here. Don't go out the door. There's my granddaughter, Nigad, and her husband, Abbas. Showing you my family here. We're going to see how much family we got here. That's my cousin Cleve, right over in the corner there. Cleve Johnson. My cousin Gene Caldwell is somewhere around. I saw him in the. Come on. This is kind of some parts of my family. And that's my son-in-law, Jaffa. Come on.
Jaffer. Where's Jaffer?
I'm just about to miss somebody around here.
There's somebody. We've got more than that.
Well, in any case,
Because some of these people.
to go a little further there, I'd like to introduce somebody who took the place of my brother, older brother. He's like an older brother to me. And that's Artie Jones. And when I start talking about friends, I look all around the place. I got a whole mess of friends here. There's Dick Mukes over there, Say Mukes. They're friends. There's Leon Faye Kessler. There's Mark and Jennifer. There's Hanson, Lola and Don. It's just if my head keeps going, I can see all of them. Sam and Nell Collins. I'm just looking around to see how many. See my good friend, the barber, over in the corner there, Brother Sampson. Yeah. Huh? And I want to call on family I'm missing, a family that is my family. It's the guy you saw up there with me, Homer Sadler, who's gone, I'd like to call Joan Sadler and her daughters. Daughter Dennis, the granddaughter, the son-in-law. like to pause a minute to say something about Homer. You know, we haven't said enough about Homer over the years. I have to pause a minute because I'm getting a little emotional. And I guess that's part of life. It's a part of why you can get emotional. But Homer and I, we were like twins almost. When you talk about me doing something with Paul Robeson, you got to talk about Homer. Because Homer and I were like twins. We were like twins in many different other things in terms of securing situations, helping people to get along better, helping things to happen like they should. There are many people in here like Clay Young over there, and Arnie Schemberg, and start talking about all the people, Edith, and Frank Wilkerson, and all the people I can wave at, people, Muriel and Marv Goldsmith, right over there. I can begin to, and Bill Mitchell, standing over there with a camera in his hand. All the people I see. Stand up. That's Abby. He's been around a long time. Okay. Right behind you there. Come on. These are 2 young people here. Stand up. There's 2 other young people there. I'm starting to run out of breath, and I don't want to keep talking about a few young people here and 2 young people there. Each of you know without me. And Wendell Collins standing over there. I can't miss him. See? Of course, all of those people, and what's this? All of the people I see here are people who touched my life, who touched life with. I see all of you. Miss you. Her husband right over here. Karen. Just if I start Don over in the corner there, Dr. Kunini and his wife. That's all the people I see, the people I worked with today over there. Karen Vines. And it just everywhere I look, I see somebody I know, and I hope and appreciation for all of these things you're doing here for me tonight. I hope I can give back. Or give back what I took. Those are the things that I must do. The things that were given to me, I must give them back. And I think that has to. That has to do with giving back all of the things I've learned. Because it's a very important thing that we do there. See Marshall Ho, I think, right back over on the backside there. Yeah. I'm starting to mention about another person I was getting ready to speak about. Suddenly, something came up from them. Charlie Dubois. I don't know where he is. He was sitting over there next to me a while ago. I see Charlie back there. And Vicky. Charlie right along with me and with Homer. Some of us, we made certain moves to make things more peaceful for people to live. I see, speaking in terms of trade union movement, I see Ralph Coron in the back. Ralph have a hard time hearing like me. But he, you know, look at the many struggles and the many things that took place. I'm honored, really, I'm honored today that you thought that I've contributed enough to have this such an affair. I'm honored to see all my friends and the people that come out. I mean, I do not need to talk too much because you know, the question is a labor of love, a love for people, a love for humankind. What has to happen, we have to do a lot of change in society. We have to do a lot of teaching, a lot of passing on to the young people that are in trouble today. Because there's trouble, and it's trouble that you just have to look to see. You don't just accept the fact that something's happening with the kids, gang situations that are happening. Don't just accept that all of these kids are gangsters, because they're not. I mean, some of them are victims of circumstances. When they have big gang roundup, they pick up a whole lot of young people and they book them. And they're stuck with the handle of a record. And there's Artie Jones there, snapping my picture. You know, Artie Jones played an important part in my life. In the younger years, kind of helped me go in the direction and learn how to grow. You know, it's a rough corner sometimes with some of us. You know, some of us are roughnecks, and we gotta kind of smooth things out. But I learned well. I learned well from Don Wilden, who was one of my first Black history teachers in the California Labor School, way back. I remember so clearly one night, I'm sitting there, John Lee and Don Wilden was there teaching a class on Black history. Somehow or the other, paths kept crossing. Somehow or the other, I seem to learn. Now I'm busy. I'm busy twisting arms, talking about Black history. And I'm sure some of the people who I can see here from my job know how much I twist their arm in terms of that. I'm not out in any shape right now to make a big speech, but I'd like my daughter to read some letters here from people.
Like this letter?
Read that letter. Now watch that paper that's falling down.
Throwing money away. That's how I am.
Yeah, well, that's got to go.
Yeah, I know, I've got it.
Dear Chuck, delighted to learn of the tribute to Chuck Mosley on August 23rd, 1992. I trust that the event will be worthy of your contribution to this nation, this state, this city, and our own community. You've been an inspiration, a strength, and an invaluable asset to this family for countless years. We deeply respect and love you dearly. Continued success. Enclosed, find a token of our appreciation. Sincerely, Mother, I'm getting so old I need glasses. I can't see anymore. Leroy Beavers, Jr. Thank you. This is a team effort. keep it out here, we might be able to pull it off.
Let's see if we can lower this mic.
Oh, I'm all right.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very pleased to learn that on August 23rd, the community will be acknowledging the admiration and appreciation of you. I wish I could be present to add my voice. I'm not even sure you will remember me, but let me try to tickle your memory. Way back in the McCarthy days, you will recall Paul Robeson insisted, in order to underline a political fact of our time, that he did not feel safe in a white neighborhood in Los Angeles unless accompanied by bodyguards. I first met you and Homer Sadler when you were both acting in this capacity when you accompanied Paul to my house. If I recall correctly, at least one of those times, my brother-in-law, Ravel Caton, made up the fourth man in the party. It was our good fortune that each time Paul visited after that, you and Homer accompanied him. I recall particularly how you made a friend of my oldest son, who was about 4 or 5 years old at the time. You offered to teach him karate, and I was moved by your generosity, but also apprehensive. I said, he's very young. Suppose he beats up on his younger brother or one of the other kids on the block. Couldn't he hurt somebody with karate? I never forgot your answer, you said. When I teach a child karate, I teach him principles. No student of mine would ever use karate offensively, never to hurt anyone, but only to defend himself. You were very gentle with my boy. I remember you as such a warm and giving person, and have thought about you often during the years. If ever you are in San Francisco, please come to see me. I know that the Revels, who live just up the hill from me, would also very much enjoy seeing you again. With warm, good wishes. I think it's Florence Michelle, I'm sorry. Michelle, you know who that is? Okay, this is to somebody else. Okay. Oh. Okay, we did that one. And this one we already did. This is Joe Johnson. Bill did that. Okay?
Okay. Well, my grandson wants to say something.
Hello. I'm John, one of Chuck's many grandkids, and on their behalf, I just want to say something. He came over to a barbecue at my house the other day, 2 weeks ago, and he was sitting on the couch and said that, was asking me if I was going to show up today. Of course I would. And one of the kids said, we're all 25, said, what are you being honored for? And with as straight as anybody could ever say this, he just said, because I'm an honorable man. And I think that says it all. I love you, Grandpa.
And my other grandson's over here. This is Roger.
You have to stand on your toes. Here, let me just hold. Here. There. Afraid I'm going to break something. Go ahead.
Well, I don't really know what to say, but my whole life, my grandfather's always been with me. He's always been one of the biggest influences in my life, and I'd like to thank him for everything he's done.
Hi, my name is Yusuf Mirza, and I'm also a grandson of Chuck Mosley, proudly. My grandfather, every young person needs a good role model, and how could you have a better role model than this? That's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Asif Mirza. My grandfather has always been there for us. in hard times and good times, bad times. And he's always been there to guide us. He's taught us many things. And I don't even know how to thank him. Words couldn't thank him enough. So I just want to say, Grandpa, we all love you, and from the bottom of our hearts. And thank you for being with us.
Good evening, everyone. I'm proud of my son and the respect that you have for him. Now, I'm the mother of 6 children. I had to raise them alone. We played ball together. We jumped rope together. I have 2 daughters. We shot marbles. We ran races together. And I taught them, I tried to teach them the right way of life. And it wasn't easy, but I taught my children to reach for the stars, although I knew they couldn't touch them. But as long as they was reaching high, they were looking high. They didn't have time to look back at the trashy part of the world. And I'm so appreciative of you people that have honored him today. And he is a great man, if I must say so myself. He was a lovely son, and sometimes he was obedient, and sometimes he wasn't, but still I love him, and I know you have love in your heart for him, and thank you very much. And I love you.
My cousin looks like she has something to say. Thank you.
My name is Imogene Caldwell. I'm Chuck's first cousin. We grew up together. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so my cousins always meant a lot to me. When I was when we were little kids, I had a little table and chairs, and I would have a tea party. You remember my tea parties?
I remember you giving me making mud pies out of.
And he would have to wear a tie. You can see no tie today. But I'd like to say that beginning with our tea parties, with all the other parties that we have been with together, this is by far the nicest one. I love you, Chuck.
For a minute and a half, the lights, please. Chuck's and Miriam's neighbor, Ellie and Jerry Schnitzer, sent the following message.
To talk about times when we laughed and we learned, but the love of events, small and great, how they both describe us.
Here's your stick.
I was mildly talent for creative thought. With few words, he put food to a teenage